Believe it or not, this guy actually has friends.
Nice.
This is Scotty G and Friends on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, folks. Hour number 3 of the program, hour number 2 of the re-rank special. Scott Garrard alongside Josh Furlong, your Ute insider, KSL.com, and from KSLSports.com, Mitch Harper, who's been covering BYU forever, kind enough to hang out with us. All right, so let's get right to it. In fact, let me reset the previous list. Coming in at 25, John Miller, Noah Avenger from Utah State, J.J. Buchanan at 23, Jackson Benny, 22, Bruce Mitchell, 21, Ryan Davis, 20, Smith Snowden at 19, Dallin Bentley at 18, Carson Ryan, 17, Evan Johnson at 16. Coming in at 15 was Bird Ficklin, Wayshawn Parker at 14, Isaiah Glasker, number 13, and Bryson Barnes at number 12. If you want to see the full list, Maddie will have it posted at the end of the show up at KSLSports.com. Another interesting player that's got ties now to multiple schools here in the state, Braden Pagan, was a great wide receiver last year at Utah State with Bryson Barnes, and now he makes his way with his offensive coordinator to come down to Utah. And I'm again, a little partial because I like Braden a lot, and I love calling a lot of his stuff. He's not your burner, but he does fit that Ryan Davis kind of mold that they had last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is how Utah's going to utilize him. They're going to try to utilize him in kind of maybe the wide receiver one, but in a different way than most wide receiver ones are used. But, I think Utah saw the success that he had at Utah State, was a valuable asset for Bryson Barnes. Obviously lived in the Kevin McGiven offense and did really, really well. And if Utah can get half of that production, they want more than that, obviously. But if they can get that production out of him, they're in a good spot. And I think, Pagan has an opportunity to continue to cement himself in maybe the future, right? Like, you would know best if he has an NFL career. But I think the fact that you can have a guy that could, approach 1,000 yards, if he could do that for Utah, he would be their first one since, I believe, Drez Anderson.
Yeah, I know, crazy.
Which is wild. I mean, I know Darren Carrington was, a few yards off, but if he can get anywhere near that, I mean, I think that's a huge win for Utah and what they're able to do, because it certainly was certainly successful at Utah State.
Did a really good job getting off press coverage. He's got, you make your joke however you want here. He's got sneaky athleticism. He's got sneaky speed.
We know what you're saying.
Yeah, he's not gonna burn it up. But
he's Ryan Davis.
He's Ryan Davis. I mean, that's really. I mean, it's spot on. But I'm fired up to see what he does. Kevin McGiven and that offense, and I think he meshes very well with Devin Dampier and that offense. All right, coming in at number 10, let's go back to BYU. Mitch, Tanner Wall checking in at 10.
Former walk-on, became a first-team All-Big 12 safety, and it's quite the story. I mean, he was such a good athlete out of high school, and his dream was to always play at BYU, and kind of just the perfect program guy. And he was impactful, and, I thought he was excellent. 71 tackles, had a pick six, but he always made key plays, and he knew the defense inside and out. He had the trust of Jay Hill, which I think was significant considering, Jay Hill coached the safeties. He played the position. He had a high bar for what he wanted from the safety spot, and Tanner Wall exceeded that. I thought he was outstanding, and, I'm curious to see if he becomes maybe an undrafted free agent. I don't know if he'll be a draft pick, but I think he gets an opportunity because he did so much. He played on special teams. He did a lot of different things for this BYU team, and he was always that guy. We know in this line of work there's always some guys that when it's a loss, you probably know who's going to hit the mic and take the one for the team, and that was Tanner Wall for BYU. Whenever there was adversity, he'd face the music and speak for the team. Like, he just kind of embodies what BYU wants. It's football players to kind of represent, and that's Tanner Wall, and he was a really good player. He's going to be tough to replace. I mean, BYU's got some good talent returning, and we'll talk about one of them coming up, but Tanner Wall was very good. He was consistent for the last 3 years. In the transition to the Big 12, Tanner Wall was a mainstay.
Well, and there's no doubt there are certain guys that have that impact on the locker room. You can tell Tanner Wall was certainly that guy. Let's move to number 9, wide receiver for BYU, Chase Roberts. A good year for Chase. Fired up to see what his future holds as well.
Chase was a really good player for BYU, and I'll admit I think last season was a little bit of a step back compared to 2024. He had a lot of attention thrown his way. I mean, he was coming back from a shoulder injury that he suffered in the Alamo Bowl. Maybe that put him a little bit behind. But Chase Roberts, impactful, and he was steady for the past 4 years for BYU. I think that he was not when you think of like a top receiver, some of the greats at BYU, like a Kali or a Puka Nacua, he's not a game changer, but man, he was reliable. You could always count on him, and he had some big catches for BYU. That touchdown against Utah where he invented a new hand gesture that they called the Super Y. Chase Roberts was really good, and he opened it up for the Carson Ryans and Parker Kingston's too. I know Parker Kingston no longer with the program, but Parker Kingston in large part became BYU's number one receiver in terms of receiving yards because I think of a lot of the attention given to Chase Roberts. So that can't be undersold, and he dealt with injuries too late in the season. He had the hamstring that he suffered against Cincinnati, so it was kind of an up and down year a little bit, but man, he was impactful, and when he was on, he was steady.
Well, and I think he may be a victim of our projections for him,
and I think that's a good point.
And so I don't want that to limit what he did last year. I mean, he had 800 yards receiving and 54 catches, led the team in receiving touchdowns with 6. Just a really, really great player. And sometimes if a player doesn't live up to the expectations we set for them, then we knock him down a little bit. But you mentioned the injuries. A guy that's been a steadying force for BYU this year, or last year.
Yeah, he was good. And I think, too, that he will be tough to replace because looking forward, BYU does not have anyone that you can confidently say is a number one or even a number two or maybe even a number three. You knew when Chase Roberts was on the field, you're going to get some level of production. And that's absent now from BYU's offense going forward. And, he again kind of looking ahead with the NFL. He went through the East-West Shrine game. I don't know if he's a draft pick. Like I always think of if Puka Nacua, how elite he was. We knew all locally how good he was out of high school. If that's a fifth rounder, I think Chase is probably like a seventh-round guy, undrafted free agent, but I think like Tanner Wall, he'll be someone they'll find a way to stick onto a roster and uplift a locker room because that's what he was for BYU.
Yeah, and I do think he's the kind of guy that probably doesn't get drafted, but then all of a sudden we'll see some reports from some camp somewhere like, hey, this guy's turning some heads.
Yeah.
This guy's making it happen. All right, back-to-back BYU players, Mr. Satawala coming in at number 8.
Satawala has the potential, Falatau, to be, I think, an all-timer at BYU in terms of the safety position. Second-team All-American by the Football Writers Association of America. He took off after that Arizona game when Raider DeMooney went down with an injury. That was the opening that created a full-time starter spot for Falatau. It was always noteworthy how early in the season it was, he was the third guy, and he was kind of taking over some snaps for Tanner Wall or Raider DeMooney. BYU was always trying to find ways to get Falatau on. They were kind of in this tricky spot where it was like, we want to respect the upperclassmen and Wall and DeMooney, but we know this Satawala guy has a higher ceiling, and he can be big time. And when DeMooney, which was unfortunate at the time, but it's like it created the opening for Satawala to take off, and he was awesome for BYU. He had a pick 6 that was kind of a game clincher against Iowa State. I thought that was one of his great moments of the season. A hard hitter. He led the team in tackles, 84 tackles for BYU, forced fumbles, sack, pass deflections. He could do it all. And big expectations. He was the guy that I think naturally all of us looked and said, okay, because the level of commitment that was put into the resources to get him in the recruitment, it was a BYU-Utah battle. You just thought, okay, he's going to follow Jay Hill to Michigan, but BYU retained him, and he announced it moments after Jay Hill was officially announced to Michigan. That was huge for BYU and spoke to Kalani's program that Falatau was invested into this program, but huge expectations. I think he could go down, potentially as one of the all-timers. If his career continues to progress, as we saw this year, he's going to be a really good one for BYU in the future.
Well, another guy that we may talk about is an all-timer, Caleb Lomu at the University of Utah, checking in at number 7. Most draft projections have him as a first-round pick, as well as Spencer Fano, who we'll talk about later as well. But Josh, I want to get your thoughts on what he meant to that team, and both he and Spencer anchoring that offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, coming into the season, there was a lot of expectations placed on both of them. And like you said, we'll talk about Spencer a little bit more, but Caleb was the guy that many saw maybe isn't as refined right now, but he has a higher potential in the NFL, which says a ton about who he can be and his longevity in the sport. But the thing is, both of these guys lived it up at Utah, right? They knew the expectations. They knew it was going to come. You knew as a left tackle that you're going to get a ton of pressure. You're going to get the best of whatever team has for you. And he held firm. He didn't allow a sack. I think he allowed maybe like 2 hurries the entire season. I mean, this is a guy that was incredibly efficient in one of the most pivotal positions on the offensive line and helped anchor what Utah needed for them, especially for Devin Dampier, especially for that run game. You know, he's just a guy that's that prototypical offensive line that's no nonsense, just kind of eats the way that he needs to and does what he needs to do and doesn't worry about anything else. And it was completely efficient for Utah. The fact that you had both of these guys anchoring both sides of the line really helped Utah with what they were able to do. You know, and I think he's a guy that he came in a little bit later than Spencer. They came in the same class, but Spencer came in spring. He had to wait until the traditional time that you come in and join in fall. And so he took a little bit longer. He took a year to get acclimated, as you know, where Spencer got there the first year, but Caleb was immediately right there. And you saw him progress. You saw him as an efficient player. He's great in the pass block. There really wasn't a lot that he gave up, and there's still many things that you can utilize or he can utilize to get better. But I think, you know, he's a guy that absolutely helped anchor that offense for the Utes, especially coming off of a 5-7 season where they needed a lot of success and a lot of faith put into them, and he was a major part of that.
Jim Harding has been such a staple at Utah for so many years as bringing so many offensive line, obviously tutoring them, coaching them up, and getting them into the NFL. Jordan Gross certainly has the resume as a player. I do think there's some people out there that might be a bit concerned about his ability to coach at the Big 12 level, but a familiar face, Gerke's back to try to help out a little bit there as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a natural, you know, you're going to have to move up to the next level, right? Coaching high school is completely different than coaching at the collegiate level. But I think the way that he's, you know, he was able to coach up a 5-star offensive tackle shows that he's got at least some understanding of what it takes. Clearly he played it, and he played it at an efficient level. Everybody talks about how incredible he is and smart as he is. So I you know, there's going to be a learning curve, and I think it's going to take some time. But I don't think that Utah is necessarily going to take a huge step back because of his brilliance in just understanding the game. That it'll help. They've got talent. They've got guys that are coming back that you know, they've had some success with. But yeah, there's going to be a learning curve. It's not going to be Jim Harding back there. But I think if there's anybody that you can trust, Jordan Gross is at least a guy that you can at least throw some, you know, be happy with when it's all said and done.
All right, we've got the top 6 coming up right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We got a couple quarterbacks. We got a linebacker. You know, there's a lot of positions left up for grabs here as we announce the top 6 football players from last year's college football season. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
You're listening to Scotty G and Friends on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome back to Scotty G and Friends. We're going to be putting the friends to work here because Scotty G is off to Reno, Nevada. I'm Jake Hatch, filling in for the final stanza of the show today alongside Josh Furlong and Mitch Harper. Gentlemen, thanks for having me along for the ride for the final half hour.
It's good to always talk football with you,
Absolutely.
Jake. We do it all the time at the student-athlete building.
We've also been blaming you this whole time, so it's finally good to have you here.
I fully expected that, I'm not going to lie. There's a fun story, and Lloyd knows this story, about a former producer of ours that made one of the biggest faux pas in 60 and 60 history that we've never let him live down, even though he no longer works with us. Let's just put it that way. So always fun. I do want to remind you guys that we are brought to you by our friends over at U of U Health. At University of Utah Health, hope is in our DNA. Learn more at uofuhealth.org. All right. So we are down to the final 6 of the top 25 rankings of the 60 and 60 here, gentlemen. And we're going to start to court some controversy right about
Let's
now.
go.
It's that Joker gif, and here we go.
Exactly.
Let's set it off right now.
So at number 6, we are diving into the quarterback debate here. And at number 6, Devin Dampier Well, Mr. Josh,
All right, let's do
break
this.
down QB1 up on the hill for us.
So I personally had Devin higher, and it's not because I covered the U, though that does give me a different, interesting perspective.
Fair.
But I think with what Devin did for this Utah team based off of the year prior, he was everything for that team, right? You go from 5-7.
Yeah.
Anybody around the program realizes like how down and in the dumps everybody was. There was like literally no hope going into the next season because everybody thought that it was going to be another 5-7 season. Did Kyle have what it took to get Utah to that level again? Devin completely changed that rhetoric instantly. Whether it was from his smile with what he did with the locker room and kind of the culture that he brought there, completely changed the game. Now, when you're looking at him from the stats, yeah, he's probably not going to be the highest here, right? Like Bear Bachmeier is going to be higher now. We can say that.
Yes.
He has better stats than like Devin, or Bear has better stats than Devin. Mm-hmm. But as a whole, I think with the complete picture, Devin was a complete game changer for this Utah team to get them to an 11-2 season. You get him another season. It just kind of gives you that trajectory that Utah's hoping. You kind of get that bridge, especially for Morgan Scalley as he's coming in, and he becomes just this great kind of figure where it's not forced, right? Like it's something that feels so natural and it makes it so easy. And he can run the ball, he can pass the ball. And quite honestly, we didn't really get to see a lot of his level because he was injured all season. They kept it under wraps that he needed surgery.
It was sports hernia.
A sports hernia, yes. So they kept it under wraps that he had a sports hernia that lingered him all year. He had an ankle injury that he lingered with all year. Like, injuries happen in football, so it's not like we're going to sit here and try to downplay everything. But the fact that he was able to do what he did with those types of injuries kind of shows the level of player that he can be. He was more efficient than what he was at New Mexico, which was his biggest knock, is like, oh, can he do that in the Big 12? And he did it. So, like, whether you have him at 6, whether you have him wherever, I don't think it really matters ultimately, because I think what he does for the program changed everything for Utah, and that gave them hope.
So, Mitch, real quick on Dampier, I use the term heart and soul in terms of what Dampier meant for the Utah football program. Because to what you're talking about, Josh, your thought on this, Mitch, is that everything he did, he really kind of just embodied everything Utah was a season ago.
Definitely. And, I think that Devin Dampier really, to Josh's point, gives a completely different outlook of what Utah is viewed offensively, because that first year in the Big 12, Utah, it was bleak. I mean, if Utah had scored just like 14 points in some games, they win probably an extra 2 games that season and go to the postseason. Devin Dampier was really good. I do think the injuries, though, you saw it like in that. I remember that BYU game, the second half, and Whittingham at the time kind of downplayed it, but it was clear as day that Dampier wasn't healthy. I think that kind of limited him, obviously, this season. I still think there's some questions, though, about a little bit of the accuracy.
Yep.
Late in the season, you get down to like 60%. If he can level that thing up, I mean, there's no reason that these 2 quarterbacks in the state can't be the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. I think Dampier is dynamic. I was really impressed, though, with his 5-to-1 TD to INT ratio, because I really thought that was going to be a mixed bag. I honestly thought going into the year, you're going to have some moments where he's going to throw some picks, but, man, he's going to be dynamic. He really didn't have that issue. I am curious, though, in 2026, how he fares without elite tackles, though. That'll be something I'm kind of curious to see how that gets answered this year. But yeah, I think Dampier, though, was excellent. Everything that Utah could have wanted and more.
Well, and I think part of that, he has happy feet at times, especially late in the season. Yeah. He wasn't setting his feet. He was kind of getting a little too antsy in the pocket, trying to maybe do too much. And so that needs to be cleaned up. Yeah. But I think to that point, you're not going to have your tackles, plus you're not going to have your security blanket of Ryan Davis. Yeah. You're going to have to find some new guys to throw to. And luckily he has a lot of these guys that are coming back, plus he's adding new ones, where if they can get that to gel, maybe he can take that next step. But you're not wrong. Like, there was times where, in that Kansas game, we got an interesting view because we were at the end zone view instead of where we're usually at like a 50-yard-ish line. Yeah. And it was crazy to kind of watch him go through his progressions, and it was just kind of so different from the beginning of the season, where he was a little bit more calm and collective, where in this he was like scrambling and he wasn't setting his feet and he was just really kind of out of sync. It worked. He found ways to do it, but I think for him to take that next level, that's where he needs to be. Is he needs to find some consistency, some rhythm there. You have to hope that Kevin McGivern and his quarterback coach is going to kind of settle him in and allow him to kind of continue to develop as a player.
All right, up next, number 5, Next quarterback on the list, Bear Bachmeier. And, Josh, you talked about it. Stats, obviously, superior to what Devin Dampier produced. Mitch, give us a sense of what Bear Bachmeier accomplished as a true freshman, and obviously now looking ahead to what should be a fairly phenomenal sophomore year.
Yeah, Big 12 Offensive Freshman of the Year, and he arrives in June, and he was excellent. I'm curious, did you guys – you said you had Dampier higher. Mm-hmm. I'll admit I had Bear higher. Jake, did you have Bear higher?
I am pulling it right now. I had Bear 2 spots in front of Devin.
Okay. I just think it was a close call. I mean, I had him right back to back on my ranking.
Yeah.
I think Bear, what was so impressive to me is just he felt very mature. He just didn't seem fazed at all by anything. And I think what was probably the most empowering thing for him was that Aaron Roderick almost gave him just the feeling like you never have to look over your shoulder.
Correct.
I was kind of surprised by that because I thought if you're going to hand the keys to a freshman, and yes, you're going to ride with him, but if it ever bottoms out, you got to make a change. And there was never that feeling of happening. Against Arizona where they pulled out a big win, he struggled mightily passing the football, but those moments were few and far between. For the most part, he was pretty accurate, and I thought that's what really impressed me the most. I think there were times where I had questions about his arm strength because BYU relies so heavily on explosive plays. The best BYU offenses under Roderick have always had explosive playmaking ability, but I think what maybe made me feel that he can be a great passer is those games, Iowa State and Texas Tech, or excuse me, the Pop-Tarts Bowl against Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Those 2 games without L.J. Martin, where he had probably his best passing performances, I thought this guy can get it done through the air because up until that point, it's a lot of relying on L.J. and also Bear's ability to run.
Correct.
But Bear did show that he can win a game with his arm, and that's what he did against Iowa State and in the Pop-Tarts Bowl against Georgia Tech.
All right, we are going to stick down in Provo with number 4 on this list. And when you do something that has not happened in the 10 years that Kalani Sitake has been a head coach, you accomplished something pretty remarkable, and that's Jack Kelly at number 4 here, Mitch. First guy to have double-digit sacks under Kalani Sitake, and I think it kind of showed when they brought him from Weber State, he was everything BYU hoped he could be.
I'm glad that you bring that up, Jake, because first time in the Kalani era. I mean, Josh knows as well as anyone. It's like Sack Lake City. That's why I think every Cougar fan thought was Kalani was going to bring was Sack Lake City. Where are the sacks? It's not happening. It's taken a decade. Finally, Jack Kelly delivered that, and he became he was an excellent football player. 13.5 tackles for loss, 4th in the Big 12. He even had a touchdown in that opener against Portland State. But I like, too, that Jack Kelly, he emerged as a captain, very quiet guy. I mean, when he arrived on campus from Weber State, I don't think he really ever spoke in front of a mic before and really kind of found his personality, too, a little bit at BYU. And I think that reflected a little bit in his play. He's always been a high-level performer. That's why Jay Hill wanted him. But I like, too, that last summer at Big 12 Media Day, he's like, I want double-digit sacks. Like, that was a point of emphasis for him, and I think he needed that because that's, I think, the big reason why he's going to the Combine. I know, BYU's new DC, Kelly Papinga, said in the past, sacks are, what was the word he used, pointless or not that big of a deal. They are. Teams will pay a premium if you can get to the quarterback, and Jack Kelly did that a lot for BYU, and his closing speed, too.
Yeah.
A great athlete, and he's burly, too. He's got huge size. His speed kind of surprises you with how big he is. But he was really good for BYU.
Yeah, Josh, you'll get a kick out of this because I hear from teams that can't sack the quarterback that they're overrated. They're not that big of a deal. But when you're a program like Utah who gets them on the regular, it's like, oh, no, they do have a big impact.
Well, it's funny because, the 2024 season, I think they had only a handful. Like, you can count on one hand.
Yeah.
11.
Okay, 2 hands. Okay.
Yeah.
But it was so different because in years past it was like 25, 27,
Correct.
30 sacks, and it was a complete difference. And it's like you're trying to massage this rhetoric of like, it doesn't matter because we got in the backfield. It's like, no, it does matter because you're making stops, right?
Yeah.
Like, clearly there's other stats that matter, but I mean, to have a linebacker like that to be able to get into the backfield, like, to me, Jack Kelly embodies kind of the Bryson Barnes of a team, right? He's just this grit guy. He just doesn't really kind of demand a lot of attention, even though he got a lot of attention, and he just does it. Yeah. And as a linebacker, you kind of have to be a little crazy and just kind of just put your body on the line, and clearly he did that. I mean, opposing teams, he was always going to be the number one guy on the scouting report on the defense just because of how phenomenal of an athlete he was, and you saw that, right? Like from the 2 years that he was at BYU, embraced the culture, and he just did everything that Jay Hill wanted him to do and turned out to be a phenomenal player.
I remember when he got that left arm injury against West Virginia, and that was paired up with Glasgow was dealing with his ankle from the Colorado injury, and I'm thinking, Kelly, I was like, this is probably going to be an extended period of time he misses. He only missed the Arizona game. He somehow came back for the Utah game. He missed the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I think that was kind of just, hey, rest. You've had a great career. Get ready for the NFL. But that guy, I mean, to your point, Josh, gritty. I mean, he gut-checked that thing and got out there for a rivalry game. He wanted that one. And, I mean, he dealt with that left arm injury for pretty much the rest of the season, but he still performed at a high level. Speaks to his investment, the buy-in into the program, and then it showed up with him being one of the top players on the defense.
Yeah, he was a BMX rider growing up. You can kind of see that in the way he played the game. There was no excuses. He just went out there and played ball. All right. We are down to the final three, gentlemen. So coming up next, we reveal who the top 3 players in the state of Utah from the 2025 football season were. More in a moment right here on Scotty G and Friends, with the emphasis on the friends.
Believe it or not, this guy actually has friends.
Nice.
This is Scotty G and Friends on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Lloyd, you had to play this song to depress us on the way out the door here? Come on. Anyway, welcome back to Scotty G and Friends. Emphasis on the friends. Hey, we are saying goodbye to football season. Jake Hatch, Josh Furlong, Mitch Harper. We are down to the final 3 selections in our top 25 countdown of the best players in the state of Utah from the 2025 football season. It's crazy to think that, Lloyd, you can. When did we announce the 60 and 60 watch list? Was that in late July or early August? When did we announce that?
No. Well, we started doing it day by day, announcing one player. And
you're right.
You
started in June. Yeah.
Yeah, it was probably June.
So
maybe even end of May. I think it was June.
So this is the end of an 8th month odyssey here. As we wrap this up here, but let's get into it. Final 3. I think all 3 of these players are kind of the foregone. Okay, these are the 3 that are going to be on the list. At number 3, the man, the myth, the legend, who is now a Michigan Wolverine, John Henry Daly. And Josh, he became everything. I think everybody who watched him in high school believed he could be. Just took a little bit of time, obviously, the mission and everything, but he accomplished that this past year at Utah.
Yeah, he transfers in from BYU, and, there was a lot of expectations placed on him, but he was behind a lot of talented guys.
Yes, he was.
So there wasn't these huge expectations to say, hey, you have to immediately hit. Now, even coming into this last year, though, there wasn't this expectation that he was going to be what he was, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was going to be a good player, but there was still maybe a competition for that position. Maybe they'd settle it on the field. But as it got closer to the games, it was obvious that he was taking that next step. And then once he got into the games, it was just one of those moments where it's like, okay, look, you can practice great, but you're a phenomenal player on the field. And his motor was just – I love that we can talk motor, right? Like, does anyone really know what motor means? They're relentless. But, he gets in there, and he was just he pursued those quarterbacks with, tenacity, right? Yeah. It was just phenomenal. But then you talk to him off the field, and he's like this nice guy, which – it's funny because we've all been in this long enough, and I swear the defensive linemen may be the nicest, soft-spoken people I've ever met in my life, and yet they'll destroy you on the field. And that's kind of how John Henry Daly was. He just was a monster on the field where he just turned into this sack machine. He just was this phenomenal athlete for Utah, and then unfortunately it hasn't been reported officially, but we all believe it's an Achilles.
Yeah.
And just devastating blow for him. And now he has to try to do that at Michigan. Personally, I don't know that he's going to play this year. Michigan's being very optimistic.
And he's claiming that he's going to be ready by spring
ball. There's no way.
I was just like, that seems very ambitious, young man.
I'm sure he feels good.
Yeah,
but to be able to have that jab step and to be able to do these different things, I just don't see it, which is really unfortunate because as a missionary, you're obviously going to be a little bit more delayed. I think if he had one more full season of what he did this year, he's easily an NFL player.
Yeah.
But I think now he's trying to push that timeline and trying to get there. And I just don't – unfortunately for him, I just don't think it's going to happen, at least this year, the way that he's hoping. But there's no doubt this was a guy that completely changed the tone for Utah because they were losing their star, defensive ends who still weren't kind of the level of what we talked about Sac Lake City in the past. but they were still these veteran guys that were effective, and then suddenly Utah was going to come in with a little bit more youth and trying to find some guys that were less proven, and John Henry Daly absolutely added consistency. He was a threat in the backfield. He made quarterbacks have nightmares because of what he was able to do, and was just this efficient player for Utah, and it's just unfortunate that, he didn't get to finish the way that he needed to because of an non-contact injury.
Jake, I'm glad that you brought up his time in high school, because John Henry Daly, I thought when BYU got him, that was a massive get, and losing him was a huge deal, because, I remember out of high school he had, 22 and a half sacks in the season.
He set the single-season high school record for the state of Utah.
Unreal. So if he gets healthy, he'll have an impact for Michigan. And I always like, too, when you dive into the numbers, how he had 11 and a half sacks, second in the Big 12, but 8.5 of those sacks were against P4 competition. Sometimes you can get inflated numbers in one game.
Yeah, he goes
against an FCS team.
5 against an FCS team. Yeah.
He was steady across the board, and if he can recover from that Achilles injury, that lower leg that he suffered against Kansas State, that would be great. He's big time. He'll have an impact in the Big Ten. He's honestly just drew a blank. Detroit Lions, Michigan edge rusher.
Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, he's Aiden Hutchinson.
Yes,
that's what he is.
100%.
And that's what he'll be if he can get healthy.
Yep, absolutely. All right, number 2 on the list, the final BYU Cougar, the reigning Offensive Player of the Year in the Big 12. This is a pretty easy one, I think, for most people to consider. L.J. Martin, 1,300 yards, and he was – I use the term heart and soul with Devin Dampier for Utah. Mitch, I felt like he was the heart and soul of this BYU team.
No question. L.J. Martin, BYU went as far as he was going to take him, and he took him to Arlington. And that game against Cincinnati where he's dealing with a shoulder injury, he was banged up in that last month of the season. He goes for 222, and that ultimately clinched the Big 12 championship game appearance, because no matter what happened in that regular season finale, they were in Arlington, so he got it done for them, winning that big game in Cincinnati. But, LJ, 3 straight years of leading BYU in rushing yards, and it's kind of been a slow build, brick by brick, with the ground attack for BYU in the Big 12 era, where they were maybe the nation's worst rushing offense in 2023, and it's been a slow climb. And now they're one of the best in the league and in the country, led by L.J. Martin. I think, man, he's 9th all-time in career rushing yards at BYU. This could be one of the all-timers in BYU running back history, up there with Jamal Williams, Tyler Algier, Jamal Willis. You can go on and on, Luke Staley. L.J. Martin, not many guys, I don't think ever, have had 4 straight years of being the leading rusher at BYU, and that's what's in front of L.J. in 2026.
So, Josh, you'll get a kick out of this. So he ran for 1,305 yards this past season. He's 9th all-time on BYU's list right now. If he garners 1,347 yards, so since he replicates what he did this past year, he will be the all-time leading rusher in BYU football history. And that's what's out there for him. And I think that's – if based on what we saw this past year, it looks certainly attainable that he could lead BYU as the most decorated running back in program history.
Well, what I love about him is that he continues to take a step up every single year. Yeah. And the fact that he was able to do this last year with essentially no depth behind him, Bear was your next best option, right?
Yeah.
And so the fact that he could do that in a position that just is grueling kind of shows the work ethic that he has, right? There's no doubt that he's talented. Clearly he, put up 1,300 yards, like you said.
Yeah.
But the fact that he could continue to do it, knowing that he's going to be literally the only scouted player on offense in terms of the run game, and he still found ways to do it. Sure, Bear added some value there in terms of being able to be another guy that they could utilize, but LJ just took it to another level, and I think that really shows kind of the level of player that he can be.
Yeah.
Now, can you sustain that through another season that way with no depth again? I don't know. But I don't know that that's his fault, right? He's doing his job, and he's being phenomenal with it, and there's no reason not to have him as a number 2 player.
I have real questions about, can he stay healthy? Because each and every season, it's been various injuries for LJ, and that's it's rolling the dice a little bit in 2026 where you don't have anything proven. I thought it would have been a perfect deal for BYU to go into the portal and maybe overpay to say, hey, you're going to be the number 2, but you're going to get paid handsomely, but you're also going to have this nice pairing with LJ. I'm surprised that BYU didn't do that because they've had a lot of success in the portal. Think of Tyson Williams, Chris Brooks.
Yeah.
They've been a place that's gotten good portal running backs, but they felt like they're going to develop from within. We'll see, just because, again, each and every season, LJ has had injuries. Now, he played every game except the bowl against Georgia Tech this season, but still, Iowa State, he goes out in the first quarter. Texas Tech, he even admitted he was not confident in that shoulder, and that was a huge game. If BYU had a healthy LJ in that game in Lubbock, I don't think it would have been different too much, but like maybe he gives you he can extend drives a little bit more. They need him healthy. He's got to stay healthy because one rolled ankle, it's a completely different outlook for BYU in 2026.
There's a staff member at BYU that told me that if LJ hadn't been what he meant to BYU this year, they likely would have had him have season-ending surgery after the Iowa State game. But they knew how important he was to that offense, and he just essentially taped it up and said, let's get after it. All right, and that brings us to our final selection here, and I think this one was I think everybody could have almost guessed this coming into today, but Spencer Fano, obviously a stud. He's going to be a very, very handsomely paid offensive tackle in the NFL. And Josh, what an incredible player for 3 years at Utah and just finished his career the right way with the Outland Trophy.
Yeah, this is a guy that came in, we talked to him at Big 12 Media Days, and he knew what was on the table, right? Yeah. He knew that he was a first-round pick based on what the projection said. He talked about it. Mm-hmm. Which you don't get that a lot from players, right? Like they're like, oh, well, I'll just worry about this season.
We'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Like Spencer, he embraced it, right? Like, and he used that as not even necessarily as motivation. It was more just like, now what I have to do on the field is live up to those expectations. Yes. And he did. Like, there was nothing about his game that was bad. I mean, I'm sure you could pick it apart and do that. I'm not the guy to be that way. But I think when you look at him, he was just everything that Utah needed him to be. He didn't allow many pressures. He didn't allow any sacks. He was pancaking guys left and right. He was doing things that opened up tremendous holes for Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin and all these other players to get through, and did it in a way that was just kind of like this humble, like, I'm going to go watch anime after this because I'm having fun, right? Like, that's who he is. Yep. Yeah. He goes to Disneyland, and he's like this gentle giant type guy, and it was just kind of like this remarkable thing, and now he's going to potentially end up as a top 10 pick in this year's NFL draft.
He's absolutely incredible. And Mitch, you saw him in high school. I saw him in high school. Considering he went from playing for Timpview and being a stud there to being a day one starter over 3 years for Utah, what an incredible just trajectory he's on.
No question. I mean, elite athlete, too, I think, at the tackle spot. And I think also, too, much better defensive lines he faced in the Big 12 this year compared to 2024. I thought there was a big step up in competition, most notably Texas Tech, but even that game, he doesn't give up a sack. I mean, he's going up against David Bailey. I mean, some of the best
Romello Height,
some of the best edge rushers in college football. And, he had a lot of success even trying to hold off those guys. And but so I think that the level of competition, the Big 12 and the defensive line leveled up, and he was still elite. I mean, to Josh's point about embracing the expectations, I remember at media days where Kyle Whittingham saying this is the best offensive line ever. I mean, he's put it out there, and they lived up to it. And Spencer Fano was the key piece to all of it. And, I mean, Josh, is he the best offensive tackle in Utah football history? Is it Gross? Is it Fano? I mean, I think it's him or Gross probably.
I would have to say with Spencer right now, but it's easy to say that in immediacy, right? Yeah. I think Jordan Gross was such a dynamic and dominant player for Utah. We'll see, right? I think a lot of people can see Jordan and what he did in the NFL too and kind of combine that. Yeah. So we'll see what Spencer does, but there's no doubt that this is a guy that was just coming into the season, he was going to be a number one guy. Yes. And he lived up to it.
Well, he embraced everything about it, too.
Exactly, and that's awesome.
Because a lot of guys don't want to do that. They want to just, I'm going to focus on me. No, he said, I get what's going on here.
Absolutely.
And the final thing I want to say, how cool was it to watch his brother announce that he won the Outland Trophy, have the whole family there? That was a really, really cool moment.
Oh, it's like they're just a true family that like they embody everything together.
Yeah.
It was cool that they got to do that together, and I think it's a cool opportunity for Spencer now, and we'll get to see what happens in April.
Yeah, we'll give a shout out to Logan, obviously his brother, who's off to the NFL with him. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Scotty G and Friends. Obviously, the emphasis on the Friends here in the final stanza. But Mitch, Josh, it's been awesome, gentlemen. Thank you for weighing in on the rankings here. I know I speak for Scotty and Lloyd when I say that. And as always, thank you to everybody who tuned in. Turn it over next to JJ and Alex. You'll have that next right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.